Coming up, this Chancellor advocated a policy, Brexit, that is causing our economy twice as much damage as a global pandemic. So when Rishi Sunak declared that his budget heralded the age of optimism, any sensible person would take that with a pinch of salt. But so bad is the impact of this first Brexit budget that the head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson, declared that the economic situation is actually awful. I'd go further. I think that not only did Shifty Sunak totally ignore the biggest global issue, climate change, but that his whole budget is predicated on Tory economic myths. Let's take a closer look. If you enjoy the channel, please give this video a like, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of new videos twice weekly. I lost the will to live during Sunak's lengthy description of a minor measure encouraging UK merchant vessels to fly the red ensign. A truly pathetic attempt to win the vote of those shouting sovereignty whenever Brexit reality bites. But the budget's main impact is surging inflation, a record tax burden and stagnating living standards. All against the Brexit backdrop of a country where British faeces can be dumped into British rivers, motorists punch each other to get the last litre of petrol, the big supermarkets are filling empty shelves with cardboard cutouts of fruit and veg, the right to protest is being stripped away, and millions face a winter of fuel poverty, having to choose between heating and eating. Welcome to Rishi Sunak's age of optimism. I laughed out loud when he boasted about restoring spending levels on schools to 2010 levels. What a boast, expecting credit for partially rolling back some of the damage done by consecutive Tory governments. Also, there's been a sharp rise in pupil numbers since then, meaning he's boasting about spending £1,000 less per pupil than the last Labour government nearly 12 years ago. The age of optimism. £6 billion taken away from some of Britain's poorest people in reduced universal credit, and only half of that was given back in the budget to low-paid workers, and nothing to the unemployed. Sunak claims that the millions hit by the cut to universal credit will be helped by the rise in the national living wage, but they won't. Around 5 million people are being hit by the cut to universal credit, only 2 million will benefit from the living wage increase. And even then, of those that do benefit, tax rises and benefit cuts as they earn more mean they'll see their income go up by a measly £250 a year. But back to Brexit. The Chancellor never even mentioned the word in his budget speech. So I will. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, says the impact of Brexit on the UK economy will be worse than that caused by the pandemic. Chairman Richard Hughes said, leaving the EU would reduce our long-run GDP by around 4%, adding, we think that the effect of the pandemic will reduce GDP output by a further 2%. For those of you who may not know, the Office for Budget Responsibility is a non-departmental public body funded by the UK Treasury that the UK government established to provide independent economic forecasts and independent analysis of the public finances. So it's hardly a pinko lefty think tank, yet they are officially saying that in the long run, Brexit has hurt the UK economy twice as badly as the worst global pandemic in history. The OBR also said that the budget would lead to the highest inflation rate seen in the UK for 3 decades. Rishier than the Queen, Sunak didn't mention that. What he did mention, though, was that we are well on our way to recovery with the fastest growth in the G7. This is a lie. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has confirmed that the British economy is still 5% below pre-pandemic predictions, and that far from the fastest growth within the G7 group of the world's largest economies, the British economy is projected to lag behind all other G7 countries by 2024. This Toryest of Tory budgets was also predicated on the myth that we need to start balancing the books because we can't afford to borrow anymore. Now sure, public borrowing levels are roughly around 100% of our annual gross domestic product, which is fairly high for peacetime. But it's not the size of the debt that matters, it's the cost of servicing it. At 6% of tax receipts, the cost of servicing our debt is the second lowest it's been since World War II. In a similar vein, Sunak is also suggesting that there is some imperative need to balance the books by the end of this Parliament, and this again is simply just not true. 99.5% of the national debt has been bought up by the Bank of England, who are the most patient of creditors and are certainly not demanding that this debt is repaid to any arbitrary deadline like the end of this Parliament. So what I'm saying is that aside from the small government low taxes pressure from his backbenchers and Brexiteers in the cabinet, Rishi Sunak had every opportunity in this budget to set out a visionary plan to transform the British economy into a, dare I say it, world-beating green economy through measures bringing forward carbon net zero targets with monetary and fiscal stimuli to encourage investment in green infrastructure, insulating homes, accelerating the switch away from gas, coal, diesel, petrol, removing government subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, aviation and livestock agriculture, meat and dairy, and privatising the rail, power and water industries that are funneling taxpayers' money into profits for fat cat investors rather than it being spent on investment into carbon zero facilities and operations. In fact, Sunak didn't mention climate heating or environmental concerns even once during his budget speech. What he did mention, though, was a reduction on taxes for anyone choosing environmentally damaging short-haul flights over rail travel. At times like these, with historically low interest rates, now is the opportunity for a forward-thinking Chancellor to be also spending on hospitals, the broken justice system, the broken social care system, underfunded local authorities and sewage systems. Contrast that with Biden's government over in the USA, where he's using financial stimulus for the green economy to boost employment and hence tax receipts, and thus ultimately bringing borrowing down. In contrast, Sunak doesn't appear to have any visionary abilities whatsoever. Rishi, if you're watching, and I'm sure you are, you need to reconsider and start investing at £111 billion a year on green infrastructure, which will create masses of jobs and accelerate the move to net zero carbon emissions while boosting the economy and your tax receipts. £111 billion is all I ask. That's only 3 Dido, Harding, Randox, Serco, Deloitte's test and trace systems to transform the country into a world-beating green economy. Surely that would be money well spent, wouldn't it?